Black Waitress answered a call in Dutch, in front of an undercover owner, then he asked to see her. There's a moment in every person's life when the mask slips, when the truth, no matter how inconvenient, comes rushing in like a cold wind through a broken window. For Malcolm Royce, Millionaire, founder of Rome Café, Bistro, that moment came on a rainy Wednesday morning. Dressed in a thrift store windbreaker, slipping through the back entrance of one of his own restaurants. He hadn't been inside this particular location in over 2 years. On paper, it was just another entry on a quarterly report, 38 of 76 nationwide. But to the people who clocked in and out here every day, it was more than that. It was their livelihood, their second home. And lately, Malcolm had a sinking feeling something was going wrong behind the scenes. The marble bar he'd once obsessed over was dulled with fingerprints. The mood felt off. Not broken, but brittle. The kind of atmosphere where people watch their words. Even around friends. He came not with cameras or press, but in silence. No one recognized him. That was the point. After a tip from an old regional manager, whispers of mistreatment, talent overlooked, and someone different getting pushed out, had to see it for himself. Then it happened. As he refilled his coffee near the prep station, a phone rang. A young black waitress, poised, exhausted, graceful, answered it. Her words, soft but clear, were in fluent Dutch. Malcolm froze. Dutch. She smiled faintly, then looked over her shoulder. And for the first time in years, Malcolm felt curiosity burn hotter than profit. If stories like this move you, consider subscribing. There's more where this came from, real stories that remind us how much we all matter. Malcolm lingered by the espresso machine, pretending to examine the calibration knobs. But every part of him was tuned to the voice he'd just heard. The woman, her name tag read Zoe, had answered the call in Dutch so fluently, so naturally. It startled him. It wasn't tourist-level fluency. It was native. But why would a waitress in a mid-tier American cafe, in a struggling part of town, be speaking flawless Dutch? And why did she immediately hush, lower her voice, and glance around after? He made a mental note. Something didn't fit. Moments later, a sharp voice cut through the back prep station. She answered her damn phone again on shift. Malcolm turned his head just slightly, not enough to look suspicious. 2 staff members stood by the walk-in cooler. One of them, a tense woman with tightly pulled back hair, shook her head as she unloaded a box of prepped greens. I told Matt we need to cut her shifts. She's always on edge, sneaking off to talk to God knows who in that language. This isn't Europe. This is a business. The second one, a younger man with a neck tattoo, chuckled dryly. She's weird. Man. Like, too smart for this job. I caught her fixing the reservation software once. Said something about a UX flaw. Who even says that? Malcolm's chest tightened. The woman went on. Quieter now, but with more bite. She acts like she's better than everyone. Talks all polite. But you can feel it. Like she's watching all of us. Ugh. If she wasn't black, I swear HR would have let us fire her by now. That last sentence hit like a slap. Malcolm felt his jaw clench. He shifted his body behind a stack of clean ramekins and forced himself to breathe. He knew what he'd heard. The words were poison. But what terrified him more was the casual tone. Like this wasn't the first time. Like this wasn't new. He walked out toward the customer area, trying to process it, when Zoe passed him again, her posture perfect, her hands steady as she cleared a table with silent grace. A family of 4 smiled up at her. She smiled back with a warmth that didn't match the coldness behind the scenes. One of the little girls reached out to hand her a crumpled napkin. Zoe took it with a gentle thank you then, just for a second, turned away, and let a shadow cross her face. A flicker of exhaustion. Or maybe resignation. It was gone in a heartbeat. Malcolm knew that look. He'd worn it himself. Once. Before he built Rome. Before money changed everything. Before he stopped seeing the people inside the machine. He sat down at a two-top in the corner. His coffee had gone cold. Didn't matter. Something had happened here, something real. Something wrong, and it had hidden in plain sight. Zoe wasn't just fluent in Dutch. She was fluent in survival. And someone in his company was trying to snuff her light out. Don't miss what happens when the truth finally surfaces. Follow for real stories that just might restore your faith in people. By nightfall, the rain had picked up again, streaking the windows with silver ribbons. Inside the cafe, the lighting had dimmed to its usual soft amber glow, welcoming to guests. But Malcolm knew better now. There was a storm brewing behind those walls. And it had nothing to do with the weather. He remained anonymous, posing as a fill-in supply chain auditor from corporate. Just a quiet presence in the corner, taking inventory. No one questioned him. That was the first red flag. In a well-run location. Unfamiliar faces, raised eyebrows. Here, they barely raised heads. He waited until Zoe clocked out. Then quietly approached the back office. The assistant manager on duty, a stocky man named Matt, was too distracted by his phone to notice Malcolm copying the weekly schedules off the corkboard. She'd been cut down to 3 shifts a week. All closing shifts. All back-to-back. No weekends. And no doubles, despite every other server rotating through at least one high-volume day. He asked Matt about her casually. "That Zoe girl, she's new." Matt scoffed. "Nah. She's been here like 2 years. She's complicated." "How so?" Matt leaned back in his creaky chair. "Too smart for her own good. Always pointing stuff out. Fixing things we didn't ask her to fix. Always on her phone. Speaking some other language. Management said she had potential once. But honestly, she rubs people the wrong way. Not a team player. Not a team player." The phrase echoed in Malcolm's ears like a bad verdict. Later that night, back at his hotel, Malcolm opened his personal laptop. He still had back-end access to the company HR logs, not something he used often. But tonight, he needed answers. He searched her name, Zoe L. DuPont, and what he found made his stomach turn. 3 years ago, she'd applied for a tech consultant role at Rome's innovation office in Chicago. She held dual degrees in computer science and business systems from Utrecht University. Fluent in 5 languages. Her cover letter was poetic, hopeful, and full of admiration for Rome's early mission. A place where people from every background feel they belong. She'd been interviewed, shortlisted, recommended for hire. And then, radio silence. A note in the file from a now retired executive read, "Not the right culture fit for this department. Perhaps better suited for frontline work if she insists on staying in the pipeline." 2 months later, she was hired as a server. She didn't leave. She stayed. Applied herself. Learned every station. Took safety courses. Even updated the glitchy POS system without being asked. And still, they clipped her wings. Malcolm leaned back, closing his eyes against the ache behind them. She had been exactly the kind of person he built Rome for: smart, driven, multilingual, compassionate, a bridge between cultures. Just like his mother had been an immigrant herself, who once served tables to put food on their own. Somewhere along the way, Rome had become the kind of place that rejected people like Zoe. And it was his fault. If you believe people deserve more than second-class treatment, follow for stories that fight for dignity. Change starts with seeing what's been ignored too long. Malcolm waited for her outside. Just beneath the awning, where the rusted neon Rome flickered in tired reds and golds. The rain had calmed. Now, a soft mist. But the tension in his chest raged like thunder. When Zoe stepped out, bundled in a second-hand coat, earbuds in, she nearly passed him by. "Excuse me," he said, careful with his tone. "Zoe." She turned slowly. Guarded. The smile she offered was polite but tight. Practiced. "I'm Malcolm," he said. "I was shadowing operations inside today. I saw how you handled that difficult table earlier. You were remarkable." Her expression shifted only slightly. "Thanks," she replied, cautious. "Are you with corporate?" "A pose. Something like that." She nodded and made a move to walk past. But something in his voice caught her again. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. That call you answered earlier in Dutch. It surprised me." That stopped her. She looked him in the eye now. Really looked. "It's my father," she said. "He's sick. Early dementia. Some days he only remembers Dutch. If I don't call him on my break, he forgets I exist." There was no self-pity in her voice. Just fatigue. And a quiet résilient love. "I try to keep the calls short," she added, almost apologetically. "But I've been written up for it. Twice. I heard," Malcolm said gently. Her eyebrows furrowed. She folded her arms. "You've been listening to staff talk about me?" He didn't flinch. "Yes." "Then you probably heard I'm too smart for this job. That I don't belong. That I rub people the wrong way." N7. "I did." She shook her head with a bitter chuckle. "They don't even hide it anymore. I come in early. I fix broken code in their POS system. I trained my supervisor on the register when he started, and still I get the leftovers. Always closing. Always blamed." Her voice cracked. "Just barely. And when I applied for that tech role 3 years ago, I thought I'd finally found a company that meant what it said in its commercials. Come as you are. Remember that slogan?" He remembered. He'd written it himself. "I gave them everything," she said, voice tight. "And someone decided I was better off cleaning coffee spills than building software." The pain in her words didn't come from ego. It came from betrayal. "I stayed because I needed the job. But also because I wanted to believe Rome was better than that. That I just had to prove myself. I wanted to earn it." Malcolm felt like the ground was slipping beneath him. He wanted to tell her who he was. Right then and there. But it wasn't the right time. "I believe you," he said instead. "And I'm sorry." Zoe looked at him again. More curious now than defensive. "You're not like the others," she said. "You actually listen." He swallowed the lump rising in his throat. She gave him a faint nod, turned, and walked toward the bus stop. Her figure blurred against the rainy glass. But her words remained sharp, cutting deep. She tried to earn a place in a company that never gave her a real shot. And now, standing in the wreckage of that truth, Malcolm knew he owed her more than an apology. If you've ever felt overlooked no matter how hard you worked, this story is for you. Follow now, because everyone deserves to be seen. Malcolm didn't sleep that night. He sat at the edge of the hotel bed, staring out the window as the city lights blurred against the rain-slick glass. In the mirror across from him, he barely recognized the man reflected back a CEO in disguise, unraveling under the weight of his own legacy. He had built Rome with the dream of leveling the playing field, a place where no one's background, accent, or story disqualified them from being part of something bigger. The mission was plastered on every wall of corporate. Inclusion is not charity. It's innovation. But somewhere between stock growth and investor calls, the mission had been replaced with metrics. And people like Zoe, brilliant, compassionate, overqualified, it had fallen through the cracks he pretended didn't exist. He pulled up her application again. The line that gutted him was buried near the end of her cover letter. I know I don't look like most people in tech, but I believe I can make Rome better, not just as a product, but as a place. She hadn't just applied for a job. She'd believed in him. And what had she received? Dismissal, disrespect, a broom and a name tag. His thoughts drifted to the executive who'd blacklisted her from the tech team. Aman Malcolm wouldn't trusted. He remembered the comment, now brushed off at the time. She's polished, but she'd be a culture risk. Talks like she's interviewing us. Malcolm hadn't followed up. He hadn't questioned it. He'd let that moment pass and let her potential die quietly in a back booth of his own cafe. His guilt wasn't just about Zoe. It was about every person like her who had been quietly boxed in, passed over, and made to feel small under the glow of a mission that no longer lived up to its name. He opened his email and started typing. First, to HR. I want a full audit of promotion and hiring rejections in the past 3 years. Especially applicants from internal staff. I want names, notes, decisions, and I want them by Friday. Second, to his assistant, clear my week. I'll be on site here. No media. No investors. This is internal. Then he paused. What did it mean to be a leader if the people who trusted you were getting hurt in your shadow? He thought about his mother again, how she used to work double shifts at a diner when he was a boy. How customers would dismiss her. But she always held her head high. People can't take your light unless you hand it to them, she used to say. So I hadn't handed over her light. They had tried to steal it anyway. And he had let them. Malcolm closed the laptop. He wasn't the villain, but he had been absent. And absence, when you're the one in charge, is its own kind of betrayal. Tomorrow, he would show Zoe and every employee watching that he hadn't forgotten the promise Rome was built on. If you believe silence can hurt just as much as action, you're not alone. Follow for the stories that remind us it's never too late to do the right thing. The next day, Zoe arrived just before 4:00 m. A soft rain still clinging to her coat. Her eyes were tired, like someone used to bracing for a storm even when the sky looked clear. She nodded at coworkers who barely looked up from their side work, then headed straight to the back to punch in. Malcolm was already there this time, seated at a corner table near the window. No longer pretending to be someone else. He wore a press button down. The same one he'd worn in the Rome corporate ad campaign 2 years ago. His presence drew stares. Whispers started like ripples across the dining room. A couple servers fumbled their trays. One of the line cooks peeked out. Pal. Zoe came out front with a tray of glasses. And when her eyes locked on him, she stopped in her tracks. He stood. Zoe, he said gently. Do you have a moment? There was something quiet, almost haunted in her gaze. You're him? Yes. She didn't move closer. She didn't drop her tray. She just stood there, frozen between two worlds, the one where she thought she worked for strangers, and the one where the owner had been sitting in the break room dressed like a temp. "Why?" she finally asked. "I wanted to see for myself," he replied. "And I'm sorry for what I saw." She walked over slowly, placed the tray down. Still composed, still professional, but her voice was ice. "You heard everything and said nothing." He nodded. "At first, yes. I wanted to understand before I acted. But you were right. About everything. I failed you." Pause. "I read your old application. Your degrees. Your skills. You should never have been cleaning tables. You should have been leading teams." Something flickered in her expression, pain. Maybe even anger, but she said nothing. "I want to fix this," he said. "Not just with words. I'm offering you a role at Rome Tech HQ. We'll start with systems optimization. You'll lead the internal tools project. The job is yours if you want it." The offer hung in the air like incenserix. Smoky and heavy. Zoe let out a breath. "Now, after everything, after years of being invisible, I know it's late," Malcolm said. "But I'm here now." She looked around. The staff was still watching. Matt had gone completely still behind the register. "You think a promotion erases what happened?" she asked. "What about the write-ups? The whispering? The way I had to prove my worth every single shift, while others just coasted?" Malcolm didn't answer. Because he couldn't. "I don't know if I want to be part of this anymore," she said quietly. "Because no matter how good the title sounds, I don't trust the culture behind it." Her voice didn't rise, but her disappointment cut deeper than a scream ever could. "I need time," she said. Malcolm nodded slowly. "Take it," he said. "All the time you need." She turned, picked up her tray, and walked away. She didn't say yes, but she hadn't said no. Sometimes change starts after the apology. If you believe actions speak louder than promises, follow for stories that prove it. Malcolm knew better than to think words would be enough. So the very next morning, before the first staff member arrived, he was already at the cafe's time, not in disguise, not hiding. He wore no suit, no Rolex, just a black hoodie with the original Rome logo from its first pop-up location printed across the chest. The logo that used to mean something. By 8 o'clock a.m., a notice was taped to the front door. Closed today for staff, renewal and restoration. And in the break room, every employee found a printed letter with their name at the top. Not a generic corporate memo. A personal message from Malcolm himself. He called an all-staff meeting at 9 o'clock a.m. in the dining area, where rows of chairs had been set up facing a projector screen. Some were skeptical. Some rolled their eyes. Others, especially the long-timers, looked nervous. The ones who knew what Rome used to be. Malcolm stepped in front of them without a podium, without security, without PR. "I came here undercover because I had a gut feeling something was broken. What I found was worse than I feared." He let that sit. Then he clicked to the next slide. A bar graph showing internal promotion rates across Rome. The numbers showed the truth: how women of color were passed over 70% more than their white male counterparts. How fewer than 5% of internal tech roles came from inside stores. He clicked again. Names and quotes from employees. Some anonymous. Some not. "I'm not here to lecture," Malcolm said. "I'm here to change this place. Starting today." He laid out everything. Right there in front of them. Effective immediately. A company-wide internal mobility initiative. Staff could apply for any open position at HQ. With mentorship and coaching to prepare. A full audit of HR practices and management training, especially around unconscious bias. A new leadership rotation program. Corporate leaders would spend a week each quarter working on site. In uniform. Retroactive review of all denied promotions over the past 5 years. Any qualified applicant passed over without cause would be reconsidered with back pay if warranted. No one spoke at first. Until one of the cooks, a wiry man with sleeve tattoos and careworn eyes, stood up slowly. "You're really doing this?" "I am," Malcolm said. "Because I forgot what this company stood for. And I won't forget again." After the meeting, he stayed, talked to staff, shook hands, took notes. He didn't rush off to a boardroom. He went into the dish pit, grabbed a sponge, and worked beside them. He made it clear to everyone, Zoe wasn't the start of a pity project. She was the wake-up call for a company that had fallen asleep behind the wheel. And for the first time in a long time, something shifted in the air. Not just surprise hope, because apologies can be rehearsed, but action. Action changes everything. She watched him from a distance, but could she believe it was real? If stories like this give you hope, consider following. We're just getting to the heart of it. Zoe didn't come in for her next shift, or the one after that. The schedule went up, and her name was gone. For 3 days. Malcolm heard nothing. No email. No call. No message passed along from staff. And part of him respected that. She didn't owe him a thing, not after what she'd endured in silence, while the machine he built looked the other way. But still, he hoped. On the 4th day, the door opened quietly, just after opening. No fanfare. No dramatic music. Just the sound of boots wet from morning dew and the soft click of the entrance bell. Zoe stepped inside, wearing a forest green jacket and holding a manila folder close to her chest. The entire cafe seemed to slow down, like the universe was holding its breath. She didn't walk straight to Malcolm. She looked around first at the team. The ones who used to cut their eyes at her. The ones who whispered when she spoke Dutch, or stayed late to clean extra tables. This time, they didn't look away in discomfort. They nodded. Some even smiled. Matt, the assistant manager who used to ignore her, was wiping down a table. He paused, opened his mouth, then quietly said, "Morning, Zoe." Not forced, not afraid, just honest. She blinked at that. Then she turned to Malcolm, who had been watching quietly from the far side of the room, trying not to hope too hard. She walked up to him and placed the folder on the table between them. "I read your staff letter," she said. "All of it? Twice?" Malcolm nodded. "I made calls. Looked up the new initiatives. The open positions. The coaching program." Another pause. "I also talked to 2 other women who used to work here. One moved on. The other's thinking about coming back." He listened. No interruptions. No assumptions. "I'm not interested in pity," she said firmly. "I don't want to be anyone's redemption arc." "You're not," Malcolm said. "You're the reason we needed one." She studied him for a long moment. Her eyes searched for the usual Tel's PR polish, CEO charm. But there was none. Just a man who had been forced to see what his ambition had ignored. "I want to build something," she said. "But not alone. Not just for me. I want to make sure no one who works a shift here ever feels like I did again." A slow breath. "If you can promise me that we're not just fixing this for me but for everyone, then I'm in." Malcolm's answer came without hesitation. "I swear it." She extended her hand, not like an employee greeting a boss, but like an equal, shaking the hand of someone she might learn to trust. They shook once. Firm, Clean. Real. The staff watched quietly. And in the stillness, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the beginning of belief. Redemption isn't given, it's built. Day by day. Follow for stories where healing becomes action. And dignity gets restored. The first day Zoe stepped into Rome HQ. She wore a plain blazer and carried a second-hand laptop covered in tiny stickers code snippets. Dutch proverbs. And one that read, "Fix the system." Not just the symptoms. She wasn't given a tour. She led one. Malcolm had insisted, "This isn't onboarding. This is a handoff." Within weeks, Zoe had reorganized Rome's outdated digital scheduling system. The algorithm that once accidentally gave high-paying weekend shifts to a select few. Replaced. Transparent. Auditable. Equitable. She introduced an internal dashboard, where hourly workers could submit promotion interests, track growth, and radically review their managers anonymously. Some managers pushed back. Some quietly resigned. But others, the ones who believed in people over power, rallied behind her. The best ones didn't fear her brilliance, they fed it. Back at the cafe, things changed too. The staff noticed something different in the air. It wasn't just that Zoe was now corporate. She didn't act like it. She still came in once a week. Sometimes just to grab a coffee and ask the dishwasher how his sister was doing. She remembered names, birthdays, even allergies. She didn't wear her promotion like armor. She wore it like a tool belt. Matt, the assistant manager, had started shadowing diversity coaching sessions voluntarily. One afternoon, he pulled Zoe aside and said, "I didn't get it before. I think I do now." She didn't smile, but she nodded. And that was enough. A laminated card now hung in the break room with 5 questions every Rome leader had to answer monthly. Who have I listened to today? What bias did I confront this week? Who deserves a chance they haven't been given? What mistake did I own? How will I do better next month? Malcolm kept a copy on his desk. 2. He filled it out, publicly signed it, scanned it, and shared it company-wide. Leadership was no longer performance. It was accountability. One morning, months after that first rainy day, Zoe stood on a small stage at a Rome town hall event. Staff from every level attended, from dishwashers to directors. Behind her, slides showed the numbers. Promotions from within had doubled. Women in tech roles, up 41%. Retention, at a 5-year high. She didn't focus on the numbers, though. She focused on the people. This isn't about lifting one person out, she told them. It's about making sure no one gets buried to begin with. In the audience, Malcolm watched with pride, not ownership. Gratitude. Because for the first time in years, he saw Rome becoming what he'd once dreamed, a place where brilliance wasn't buried under bias. A place where a girl who spoke Dutch on her break didn't get written up but got heard. And every server, every barista, every overlooked genius out there saw that maybe, just maybe, the system could change. Not because someone at the top said it would, but because someone from the floor stood up and rebuilt it. If this story touched something deep in you, don't let it end here. Subscribe for stories where real change begins with just one brave voice. It was nearly closing time when it happened. A young girl, maybe 10, sat at the corner booth with her mother, sipping hot cocoa while waiting for the rain to let up. She watched as Zoe moved through the cafe, greeting staff by name, checking the new touchscreen kiosk she'd helped design, offering to carry plates even though she didn't have to anymore. The girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, is she the boss?" Her mother glanced up, surprised. No. I think the man in the nice shirt is. Malcolm stood at the front, quietly observing older, wiser, changed. The girl shook her head. She feels like the boss. Zoe overheard it. She turned with a small, surprised smile. Not the boss, she said gently, kneeling to the girl's level. Just someone who wants to make sure people are treated right. The little girl grinned. I want to do that too. Zoe nodded, her voice soft but steady. Then you already know what leadership really is. Malcolm stood nearby, watching the moment unfold. He felt something loosen in his chest like guilt, finally giving way to grace. He stepped forward, offering Zoe a warm, quiet nod. She returned it. No grand speeches, just mutual respect. As the rain began to slow outside, the little girl looked out the window, her breath fogging up the glass. She drew a small heart with her fingertip. Behind her, two people and strangers, now partners in purposes, shared a silent understanding. Leadership isn't about being seen. It's about seeing others and refusing to look away. If this story reminded you that people can change and that dignity always matters, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this waiting to be told.